I'm Sarah Knight, and welcome to It's Got Pockets, where just like finding the surprise pockets in your favourite trousers, I'm bringing you perfect pockets of joy and realness. Every week, I'm having unfiltered conversations with women who crack the feck on, even when life gets proper lifey. Women with experience, expertise, and wisdom. Because sometimes the best stories start in the middle. Women who've been there, done that, and they're still figuring it out. Join me for real talk, useful tactics, and all the swears in between that make your life and business feel that bit more manageable. Well, hello. Welcome to this episode of It's Got Pockets. And I am joined by the fabulous Helen McHugh. Hugh. How do I say that?
McHugh.
There we go. I got it. I think something like that anyway. And oh my word, when me and Helen had her pre-podcast chat, we were online for hours putting the wheel to rights, and we probably should have just recorded it then. But we're here now recording for this episode. Helen is founder and a director of her own business. And today I want to dig a little bit deeper into why you started your business, what was involved in starting your business, and where you came from. It's all about strategic engagement, relationship, and impact. You're a trustee and you're a Northern Power Women Awards nominee for a person with purpose. So I'm going to start with that. But just to give a little bit of a flavour, you also spent 13 years walking the corridors of power, working in Westminster with the Labour Party, didn't you? So
I did. That's why I look like I'm about 75 years old.
So what era of politics was that? So what time frame was that? Who was in power?
That was, I entered the Westminster Arena in 2005. So that's when I worked for the absolutely lovely Lord Neil Kinnock in his office in the House of Lords. I had the big table with the big leather desk with the magic box, as he used to call it. That was the computer, and he had a little fold-down table. So that was very funny. And then I started working at the Labour Party in 2006. So that was towards the back end of the Blair government. So I did actually work in government for a little while, not for too long. So I went through from Blair, Brown. Now I've got to remember them all now. Miliband, Corbyn, and then I left. So I basically saw power, not power, and every bit of the Labour Party political spectrum, every side of it.
Wow. So how did you get into politics and Westminster? Is that what driven you?
A little bit, yeah. So I always used to, so I come from quite a political family. So my mum and dad are both lifelong socialists. I come from the Socialist Republic of South Yorkshire, very proudly from Rotherham, and we've always been surrounded by politics when I was little. And my big brother stood as a candidate for the Labour Party back in 2001. I went out door knocking for him, which was very interesting. So we've always been surrounded by it, and I kind of did what I always do. Went into university and thought, I quite like politics. I'll just give it a go, and did a politics and German degree, and then decided in about 2003 that I just wanted to work in Westminster. So I just literally got on a National Express bus and went to London, slept on my friend's floor for a while, and managed to get an internship. In those days, it wasn't. You didn't get paid to do internships, so I had to.
Hang on a second. So let's just unpick that a little bit. You decided you wanted to work in Westminster. So you got on a bus, slept on your friend's floor, and just knocked on the door one day and went, "Gives a job, mate."
No, well, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just did a bit of kind of temping work in London just because I had to be able to get on a tube and buy a sandwich and get a pint and stuff. So I got on so it was actually through my other brother, who is not related to politics at all. He's actually a musician, and he said, "Oh, I think I know somebody that might work in Britain in Europe." So Britain in Europe was the pro-European cross-party campaign organisation that was set up, and initially to take Britain, or to try to make the case for Britain joining the single currency. So I was very interested. I studied European studies, so I was very interested in the European project, and I'm a big pro-European, and so I got a couple of days a week unpaid working for Britain in Europe, and doing like temping jobs in between and all the rest of it, and then actually got a paid job eventually with Britain in Europe, which I did for about a year. So that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And then that campaign organisations, like many campaign organisations, came to an end. They're never ending. So that came to an end, and Neil took me under his wing because he was one of the board members at Britain in Europe. So he was like, "Come and work for me, love." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." And so it was all really like luck, to be honest. But there was no element of, there's quite a lot of nepotism goes on in Westminster, which will come as no surprise to anybody. But obviously I'm not from a private school background, and went to a normal comprehensive school, and didn't have that kind of foot in the door that some people would have, but just did a bit of grafting really, and was willing to do rubbish jobs in between getting paid to do typing up letters and things like that.
And one of the things she said there is, she said it was a bit of luck really, but I don't believe in luck. Luck is where grit, determination maybe meets a bit of chance. You had to have the determination to go, that's where I want to go, and that's where I want to be. And then you move towards it. You were ever moving towards it. But let's just talk a little bit about the power of knowing someone who you know. One of the things I talk about a lot in my training is who's at your table and who's around your table, and who are you talking to and who you're having conversations with, because putting yourself in the right rooms is so important at any age, isn't it, when you're looking to
Absolutely.
progress?
Yeah. So I think there was quite a big element for me when I was younger. You probably will be a little bit surprised to hear that I was very shy. So I did not like putting myself out there. I found it very uncomfortable. I found going, into a new workplace, going on the tube, all this kind of stuff, really not nice. And I had to really push myself like right out of my comfort zone and force myself to sit in rooms that I didn't want to sit in with people who I found massively intimidating, because when you're young and you're not used to it, politicians are intimidating. And I had no experience, and I just got shoved in, like literally shoved in at the deep end. And it was like, oh my goodness me, I feel like completely out of my depth. Even if it was just taking minutes for a lot of like old lords that were joining a meeting, I'd still be thinking, oh my goodness me. But I think it's I had to really push myself out of my comfort zone, and I had to be really brave to kind of get those opportunities that I did get.
Yeah. And that bravery and that courage and that showing up, that's hard though, because I still think that, if I was in the corridors of power at Westminster, I think I'd still find that quite intimidating. It's quite and am I right in thinking it was quite a male dominated environment?
It was, yeah, very, very male dominated. And yes, it is intimidating. I think it's intimidating, but I don't tend to think too hard about stuff. So I was just a bit like, yeah, it's intimidating. But I'm just going to get on with it. I've just got to suck it up, because if I'm here, I've just got to be here. And then you'd have to, I can remember, I don't know if you've ever been in the House of Lords, because that's where I was based with Neil. I did work in the Commons as well, actually. It is like an absolute maze, and you can get completely lost in there. So I'd be wondering, and there's certain places that you're not allowed to go. And if the sergeant at arms finds you where you're not supposed to be, you get like properly told off. So there's there's that added scariness of thinking, oh gosh, I'm actually going to get told off if I go the wrong way through this door. It's a bit like, going in an escape room. We were just talking earlier about escape rooms, because my daughter's going to an escape room tomorrow for her birthday. But it's a bit like, oh God, if I take the wrong door, I'm going to get like told off like I'm a 5-year-old.
Pressure on pressure on pressure. It's like if I go this way, I'm going to be in trouble, and if I don't get there on time, I'm going to be in trouble. And oh my God, look where I am. This is like. So how did you navigate that? A woman in Westminster in the House of Lords with ambition?
Not really at the time. I was just kind of getting by really, and enjoying where I was at that time, and living every day as it came to me. So I'd never had any ambition at all, to be honest. And a lot of people always say to me, have you ever wanted to be an MP? And the answer is categorically no, absolutely not. That was never my ambition. That was never my motivation. I think my motivation was always to be behind the scenes, making stuff happen and making stuff happen really well so that other people could take the limelight. This is kind of, when you work for a political party, that is really what you learn to do. You learn to keep the show on the road, and then other people take the limelight. Yeah, and that, yeah. So it's really, really interesting. But no, I wasn't walking around the House of Lords with ambition. I was walking around the House of Lords thinking, please don't take the wrong door and get a shark start.
And where did your ambition come from? Is it something that's grown as you've got older? Is it something that, because, going into the Northern Power Women Awards with the, person with purpose is quite closely linked with ambition. You've got to have drive if you want purpose. So where did you find your purpose?
So I think, I've always had purpose. I've always, and I get that from my mum and dad. So they've always been people that have, stood up for the right thing. I mean, back in the day, they were members of CND. They probably wouldn't be now, but we used to have the World Development Movement meetings in our house every kind of Sunday evening. So I was always surrounded by this sense of there are people in the world that need our help, and there are people that that require us to step up as people. And we weren't particularly rich when I was young, but we had enough money to have that awareness that there were other people that were less privileged and well off than we were. So that sense of kind of purpose has always been there. And that definitely 100% comes from my mum and dad. And then when you do a job for long enough, when you're surrounded by, when you're in an environment, and for whatever anybody wants to say about a political party, people are motivated there to do the right thing. And I know that some people listening to this might think, oh God, what's she talking about? I honestly believe that to be true. Like, you might not always agree with what that person's trying to achieve, but actually they are trying to achieve it for what they think are reasons that will benefit other people. I do truly believe that. And when you've been working in that environment for so long, you can't help but be driven by goals, essentially, and those goals to make people's, my drive is to make people's lives better, but to make people's lives better that aren't as privileged as I am. And so I was allowed, the jobs that I've done have allowed me to do that. I've kind of been able to shape what I do through the jobs that I've had. So I've been very lucky in that respect. And then I'm really lucky to be able to do it now through my own business, and actually to be in charge of something and say, well, actually, what positive change is this bringing about? And positive change can be brought about in many different ways. It doesn't have to be, there's no handbook for it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Not at all. So, yeah.
And that, if you look at the Japanese philosophy, ikigai, that almost talks about how you get up in bed in the morning. The fabulous Damien Hughes was talking to me about it the other day. And actually, from that point of view, it's a number of different elements that surround that allow you to actually, what gets you up and out of bed in the morning. And that's playing to your strengths. But equally, it's about what is the positive contribution that you're making. And you've got to be able to feel that, to be able to do something and feel the drive, however you want to say what that drive looks like, to crack on, to press play, to do the stuff that you want to do, because otherwise you could just end up rocking in a corner, couldn't you?
Yeah, and it's not always the easiest course to take to try and do positive stuff, to try and stand up to certain people or certain organizations or whatever that may think that that's not priority number one. And so you really have to be saying, no, it is important, and just keep going on about it and keep going on until people go, oh God, she's still going on about it, oh God. But actually it's what ultimately will profit and power and all the rest of it, and money. Yes, they can buy you nice stuff, but I think that doesn't motivate me, is what I'm saying. No. In a very roundabout way, sorry.
No, go for it. This is what we're here for. So from that point of view, and then you talked earlier about the fact that you were in politics with the Labour government when they were in power and out of power. How does that translate when you're watching effectively failure? What happens then? What's the atmosphere like then?
It's really, really hard. I think it was really funny when I did my leaving speech when I left the party in 2019. And doing a leaving speech was actually really out of my comfort zone at the time. I had to kind of write it all down, and we didn't speak at the Labour Party. We weren't the people, as I said earlier, we weren't the people on stage. And I remember a guy saying to me actually, just before I was about to leave, he said he was the vice chancellor of a university in London, and we were doing an event there, and he said to me, "Why aren't you on stage introducing this event?" And I said, "Well, don't be daft. We don't get on stage. That's not our job." And he went, "Get on stage and do it."
Wow.
And I thought, "Oh shit!" And all I had to do was say, "There's Angela Rayner. She's coming on stage." It wasn't like difficult at all. But I thought I can't do that, and I had to do it because he literally pushed me on stage. But when I did my leaving speech at the Labour Party in a pub in Westminster, one of the things I said was that I had literally never won a campaign, which is not a great. I hope doesn't say too much about me. No, it's a collective effort, but it's really, really hard. And I think it's hard, but you just get up and you do it again. It's really interesting. It's really good for your resilience. It's really hard. It's really tough. The hardest one for me, I think, was when the referendum was lost in 2016. I was really genuinely, really gutted the next day after that. I think partly because it was so close, partly because it was a cause really close to my heart, and I really felt strongly about it. And then to lose that was devastating. I think I might have put. In fact, I know I put something on Facebook that had a few swear words in it, to which my phone then rang, and my mum was saying, "I don't think you should put that language on social media." I had to take it down because I felt so bad.
Because you got in trouble off your mum.
I got in trouble off my mum for swearing on social media, but I was like, "Mum, it's like this is the worst thing ever." Going through to having an election of results last year that was at last a positive one from my perspective was really, really was quite incredible after all of those years of not winning, even though I wasn't part of that campaign. So there's quite a few. I have a lot of friends who are Labour Party or political alumni, so they don't work in politics directly anymore, and we all kind of had a bit of a collective cry and celebrate last year when the election was happening, because we knew it was going to be positive. The party won, but we weren't part of it, and I think that was quite hard. Actually, it was kind of amazing. I mean, it wasn't kind of amazing. It was incredible. The result was fantastic, but not being part of it after all of those years of having lost was
and then it kind of went,
yeah.
And when you talked about the referendum, were you in the room with everybody when it was announced? So or were you watching it somewhere, or?
We were watching it. So we'd been out during the day. So I actually really hate knocking on doors. And when you work for a political party, you have to go and knock on doors. And I had a bit of a reputation when I worked at the party. I probably shouldn't say this, of not enthusiastically knocking on people's doors. Let's put it like that. So I would go up to people's doors and kind of go, as opposed to and then goes everybody in and just walk back up the road, and it was known as the Naylor Knock. So my maiden name is Naylor. It would be the Naylor Knock, as in not much of a knock. So on the referendum day, I actually didn't want to go out door knocking. I felt like there was such a strong sense of one person's opinion against it. Was like basically a yes or a no. It was a referendum. It was a yes or a no, and so you could potentially get people that really didn't like you knocking on their doors. I just didn't want to do it. So I went on a bus around London with I used to do celebrity engagement, which sounds really, really exciting. It absolutely wasn't at all. But I was on the Labour Inn bus going around London with the late Tessa Jowell and my old boss Carol, who's ace. And we were kind of picking up celebrities as we went around London, different spots in London.
This is brilliant.
It was really good fun. And then we ended the day, I think, somewhere in North London, and drank a bit of gin. And then I went to get fish and chips and was walking down the road and looking at my phone and walked straight into a lamppost. So I was a little bit concussed and a little bit drunk. And then went home. And Carol, my good friend Carol, who's my old boss, we all came back to our house actually, and watched the results come through, and then drank a bit more.
Yeah.
and drank a bit more. And then I remember really distinctly, my alarm always wakes me up at 6:55 in the morning so I can get the headlines. And I remember just hearing Priti Patel being jubilant and saying we won, and I was just really gutted. But when you do an election campaign, it's different. You are in the office when the election results come through, so you do immediately see the exit poll. Which has been quite an experience over the years, seeing those various exit polls come through.
Yeah,
because you get an immediate kind of, you get an immediate sense of what's gone on.
You know what's happening. So you started down there with Neil Kinnock at 2005. So have you seen a growth in women in politics over that time, or has it changed? Is it the same?
That's a really good question. I mean, there are more female MPs, which is obviously a brilliant thing. And we can have discussions about quotas for MPs until the cows come home. Is that the phrase? Until the cows come home? Sheep come home?
Yeah.
The cows, isn't it?
The cows.
It's the cows, yeah. And I just don't know whether there is a big enough shift, if I'm being completely honest. But I don't think that is particularly related to politics necessarily. I think it's across the board. There's a lot of movements. I used to run the Women in Tech Awards at Talk, which is a great initiative, great support of women. But the fundamental dial, I always say this to people, the fundamental dial has to shift. And I don't feel that it's shifting like it should be, unfortunately. And that's not just in politics. It's kind of across the board. So, yeah.
So what is the dial? What is it that needs to shift, though? Is it how women are supported in the workplace? Is it women themselves being able to show up and go, I can do this, and then staying in the career longevity and the different life change? Is it appetite for it? What do you think the dial is?
I think it's a very multi-layered dial. I think there are so many different things that need to be part of that dial shifting, be it sounds really basic, but women taking career breaks to have children, right? I mean, I experienced this really, really strongly, that I was a certain level when I was 30, and then I was the same level when I was 40, just because of my choice to take breaks to have the kids. I mean, it's just a basic thing that I think it's when people get very senior in organisations, they feel that they need to behave in certain ways. I think that shouldn't have to happen. You can just be nice, and you can be strong, and you can be a good leader. You don't need to behave in a certain way to be successful. So actually, I think that sometimes it's a bit of a reflection by women on themselves, actually, about how they're behaving in jobs at a senior level. So this is not a man beating session. This is not about men. And men do play a big part in it. And I do talk a lot about male advocacy and how important that is. And authentic male advocacy. I can't say the word. You say it, Sarah.
Advocacy. Oh my God. I actually said, usually I try and say the word specific, and then that all goes to pot. But I actually said that word all right as well. So I was doing some training yesterday, and I was trying to say a word. I think it was something like gender parity, and I just couldn't get it out. And in the end, I just said to someone on the front row, what am I trying to say? Could you tell me, please? Because that's all sort of the brain fog going on.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So talking about this advocacy piece, which we can now both say, which is amazing because we've been practicing silently. I think it's a really important point, isn't it, to make that it's not men versus women. And actually, we've had these conversations off air. Sometimes it's the women, and actually, we don't call that out often enough because we all want to be women empowering women and women supporting women. But sometimes we have to realise that actually it's also the women not putting the ladders down to help other women grow, move forward.
Yeah, and I think I would not be alone in saying this, but I have experienced this quite a lot in my career, sadly. So the only thing you can do when you've had a bad experience is to learn from that and make sure that you don't behave in that way going forward, so that you do put those ladders up, that you're nice, that you put people forward, that you support people, that you embellish them in public, that you make them feel as good as they should feel, that you give them the opportunities to shine. Because when you give people the opportunity to shine, that's exactly what they will do. If you give them a little bit of space to be good, if you give them that bit of room to excel, you will get the absolute best out of people. I truly believe that. And you don't need to behave in a certain way to make yourself look better. That's not how you get forward in life. That's not how I want to get forward in life anyway. It might be how you get forward in life, unfortunately, but it's not something that I want to be part of. It doesn't interest me one little bit. I'm going to say something very random now, but people who know me know that this is not too random. I'm a big fan of. I lived in Austria for a long time when I was younger, before I moved down to London, before I got on that National Express bus. And there's a famous German band called Scooter. So they're a techno band. And I absolutely bloody love Scooter, right? So I'm a classically trained musician who absolutely loves Scooter. And I was listening to one of their songs the other day, and the lyrical genius, that is Hans Peder, he's the singer of Scooter, says, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And I actually think that is, in the words of the lyrical genius, techno hero, that is what I would always say. And it didn't fit in my 6 words, because I would have had that as my 6 words at the end, but I realised it's not 6 words. So I've managed to get it in there anyway.
Yeah. Niceness is so underrated, isn't it? And also
yeah,
I think it's been quite weaponized over the years, almost like it's a bad thing, and actually niceness is something that we should all be aspiring for. Like, I love what you said about, actually, as women in business, our jobs are to help other women shine. And, well, other
yes.
people shine. Everyone we are with, the more we can help other people shine, our light gets stronger.
And also your light gets stronger, but that kind of fire within you to do well, that will also ignite and burn brighter, and you'll get a better feeling about yourself, I guarantee, if you big up other people. Because there's actually nothing worse than being down on people and being a bit mean, and it doesn't make you feel good. It
No.
makes you feel the opposite. We can all be a bit mean. Of course we can. We're all human beings. But actually, does that make you feel good? I'm not entirely sure it does. I would say it definitely doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's about that positive contribution thing as well, that comes into how our DNA is and how tribal we are. Actually, the more we can do that, the more we can move forward. But we want to feel good as humans, and if you're not helping opening doors for the people, and I see it so often in circles of women, actually, who aren't opening the door for other people, and they're saying they're opening the door for other people, and then actually what they mean is they're opening the door for people like them who they want to invite in. And that really pisses me right off, I've got to say. Anyway, let's move on. So, before we move on, I want to know how you ended up north from Westminster, and how you ended up running your own business. But very quickly, who's your favourite Prime Minister that you've worked with?
Tony Blair, 100%. I just think he's such an amazing politician. He's really nice. He's really nice person to work with. I also think that's really important, that I always judge MPs, and I judge everybody on how nice they are to their staff. And he would kind of put on stuff for lowly staff members who were kind of really grafted behind the scenes. We got invited to Chequers one time, and there was the team from Newcastle came down on the Stellar Express, as in a coach from Newcastle, and he allowed us to go into Chequers. And this was just the summer when he was handing over power to Gordon. And that was just really nice. So I think there's that ability to be a fantastic politician that you can look up to, and equally like a nice person that respects their staff working for them. So categorically, Tony Blair.
I love it. That, again, the power of niceness, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
the stories rumble on, of actually you want to be around that person because they're nice and they're just fundamentally a good human. Regardless of what your view is of politics, if you're a good human, you want to be around someone.
Yeah, 100%.
So how did you end up from Westminster, from politics, from working in the Labour government, to running your own business up north?
Good question. So we were always going to move back up north. So I'm from Rotherham. As I said earlier, and my husband's from Manchester. My husband went to university in Sheffield. I wanted to move to Sheffield. We very diplomatically said that we didn't mind which of those 2 cities we moved to, as long as we liked the house. So we did actually put an offer in on a house in Sheffield, but didn't get it. It was that classic situation of sitting in the back garden in COVID, looking at Rightmove, going, "Oh, look what you can get up north," and that kind of COVID definitely made our move quicker than it would have been. So I think we would have moved a couple of years afterwards had it not been for COVID. But we kind of just took the plunge, and I came up to Manchester after we didn't get the house in Sheffield. I came up to Manchester and looked at our house on my own because it was in the middle of COVID lockdown. Couldn't bring two little kids on the train up with me, and saw the house. I thought it was nice, and we bought it. And the first time that my husband saw it was when we walked through the door.
So you had the kids by this point. So you had your kids whilst you were working in politics in London.
Yes.
How easy was that?
Not very easy at all. But I think at the time we didn't know any different, right? So you have a baby and you have it and then you drop it off at the babies, she and a he. We would drop them at nursery in the morning at 7:45, and one of us would pick them up at 6:15 every night, and it would be like that every single day, and we didn't know any different, and that was just what it was. And then during election campaigns, during the 2017 election campaign, rather bad timing on my behalf, about 3 weeks into the campaign, I found out I was pregnant, and which was suboptimal, and had to kind of then work 15-hour days, 6 days a week for the next 7 weeks, which was not great. I think at the time I referred to it as being traumatic. It's quite traumatic, but you kind of just do it. And it was only when COVID came around that we were like, oh, wait a minute, we don't need to do this anymore. Like, the kids are actually quite nice, aren't they? Nice people to be around. It just totally, it shifted the dial entirely on how we kind of had the kids. So yes, it was very hard. Expectations of you when you work in politics don't change whether you have children or not, and that's men and women. You have to get on with it. That is just full stop. So it was hard. So we kind of moved up here in the middle of COVID, and I got offered a couple of jobs, and then was offered the job with Talk. So I thought to myself, well, actually, I've worked a lot with business, but I've never worked actually in a big corporate. So I need to expose myself to that, and I need to get experience of that, and I need to learn about the corporate world. And went into Talk and did a job there for 18 months. It was a really fantastic opportunity for me to, moving in the middle of lockdown and being given a job that was all about external relations was quite challenging, because I didn't know anybody. I had to very quickly get to know people, but you could only get to know people in a kind of non-face-to-face setting. So it was a little bit challenging. But Talk, and I'm very grateful to Talk for this, gave me a platform that I could get to know a lot of people. And without Talk, I wouldn't have been able to set up my own business. So I'm very grateful to them for that. Yeah, so I did that for a couple of years, and then I stopped working at Talk, and I'm quite impulsive. I don't know if that has come across, but I am quite an impulsive person. I thought, well, do you know what? I'm just going to give it a go. I can see that there's a gap in the market for what I do. I can see that I enjoy it. Let's give it a whirl. So I very quickly kind of put it all together and then started whirling, if that makes sense. And it's been great.
And what's been the biggest similarities or the biggest differences between working in politics, working in corporate, and running your own business?
People are always the challenge. I have this conversation. They can be the challenge and the best bit of a job. And I think you can draw a very kind of distinctive line through careers and pathways by the people that you interact with on those journeys. So I would say people can be challenging, and people can also be absolutely brilliant. So I think from my experience of setting up my own business, I definitely couldn't have done this if I'd still lived in London. I can only do that, and I can say hand on heart that I've done it in Manchester because I've had the support of amazing people around me who have said, of course you can do it. So people can be the most challenging, but they can also be the absolute best. And those people that had said, yes, go on, of course you can do it, you can achieve this, have been the greatest asset to me in setting up my own business. Yeah, and the greatest support mechanism.
And so the impulsivity came across when you said you just got on a bus and decided you were going to work in Westminster, FYI. But when you were talking about setting up a business and you just did it, you just thought, I'm going to do it. Was there a business plan? Was there, did you think about funding? I'm talking about this because when I set my business up 23 years ago, I was pregnant. No one would give me a job. And the company I was working for had gone into administration. And I didn't think about a business plan. I didn't think about, how we should do anything. I was literally like, I need to pay the stuff in mortgage. And actually, let's just go. Let's just see what the need is and just move forward. Is that how you approached it? Did you have a little bit more of a plan?
Not really, if I'm being absolutely honest. So I went to the pub with my friend James, and we we were looking after we had the kids, we went to the pub with kids, his kids and my kids, and we kind of spent 2 hours and a few pints brainstorming names for the business. And then I got a designer to I tried to design my own logo and it looked rubbish. So I actually employed a professional. That's a really like big tip, like in terms of setting up my own business. I have to outsource things that I can't do because I don't get accountancy. I can't, I'm not a designer. Those things have immediately got outsourced. My IT, I mean, goodness me and my husband, it was quite challenging setting up my IT. And actually, one of our friends, who's a national journalist, came to stay over Christmas. And I said to him, You're good with computers, aren't you? Can you just have my computer for me? This was about 3 days before I started on the 1st of January last year. And 5 days later, he'd actually sorted it out whilst actually being on TV, doing a live, doing a live show. So I'm forever grateful to him for doing that for me. But I didn't really have too much of a business plan. I just thought I knew in my head what the proposition is. I think I'm still working on the proposition. But I think that it would be very unrealistic to say that it's not a completely it's an evolving thing. I'm not selling apples. These things. I'm not running the shop, and it will evolve. And I think that's really quite liberating for me, is to kind of see that process happening, and that I'm actually in charge of that process is really, I really, really, really enjoy that. So no, I didn't really have much of a business plan. I'm fortunate enough to not, because it's me, I'm the asset. I don't have to spend much money on the operation at the moment. And so, yeah, so I just kind of thought, what, let's give it a whirl. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Obviously, there's challenges with running your own business and with building your own business and how you move forward with that. What's been your biggest challenge today?
My biggest challenge, I think, by far, was leaving my job at the Labour Party, because you really commit. And I speak for all of my friends who have left the party. You give your absolute all to that job. You become very institutionalized. You also don't believe that in your own self-worth. I'm not having a go at the political, parties for this. It's just the way that they run is that you basically are at the mercy and you are told what to do by people above you. So you come out feeling like you don't really have much sense of your own kind of self-worth. And that was very, very challenging. So I often say to people that working in politics is the absolute best job that you could do, and it's the absolute worst job that you can do. And so it was very challenging coming out of it and thinking what on earth I was going to do next, because it would basically be the whole of my career.
Yeah.
In the early years of my career, and I just thought I don't know what I'm going to do, because that was very, very challenging. And I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old tagging along.
So you've got a lack of self-worth, and then you've got that whole identity thing that happens when you become a mum often. How have you managed that? And what are the sort of top tips that you've put in place to go, right, okay, this is how I've built it back up to have the confidence to run your own business?
I've had to be quite brave. I've had to be quite resilient. I'm not sure. I feel you have to just be like, carve out time for yourself. You need to carve out time for your children. You need to carve out time in your home life for the people that you love, for your family, the wider family. And that's really challenging, but it's also really rewarding at the same time.
And ever evolving.
Ever evolving. Honestly, my daughter's turned 10 today. Cannot believe she's 10. Can't actually believe I've been a mum for 10 years. I think that's the most scary bit of it. But your children are ever evolving. So you have to evolve with them. And that actually teaches you a lot about yourself. And that actually, the evolving nature of being a parent actually helps you with the evolving nature of running your own business, I think. That really does, it helps to drive you forward, and it helps to motivate you, because as your children get older, you realise that you are somebody that they will look up to. You are somebody that they will challenge. I get challenged quite a lot by my children, which is a good thing. I want them to challenge me, but it also puts you get a mirror put right up in your face.
Yeah. And And do you feel like your ambition is growing as you get older? You know, you've set up your own business, and you know, we talked right at the beginning about how your fire's ignited and how you move forward, and the fire that you had in your belly for the Labour Party. Is that now developing for you?
Yeah, I think it is. It definitely is. I think when you're your own boss, all of a sudden, it's liberating. You're like, oh, do you know what? I have got this talent. I have got this ability, and anybody that may have been a naysayer or may not have allowed that to flourish, they're not there anymore. They're just not there anymore. So it's just like, yes, and then you can see like this kind of big blue sky opening above you, which is really fantastic, and it's great for your sense of self-worth. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I could not recommend it more. I've absolutely loved it.
I love that, the analogy of the blue sky opening up. One of my 10 years ago, one of my very best friends caught it. She died, and she had terminal cancer. So as she was looking to the end of her life, she wrote lots of notes and lots of things and lots of stuff for her kids more than anything else to be thinking about as they were moving forward. And one of the things that she said, which has stuck with me throughout time, is that we spend a lot of time looking at our feet and looking at what's just down there. And actually, if we just raise our eye line and we look up at the sky, there's all these different possibilities around, and there's all these different options around. And our view becomes different, and our lens becomes different, and our perspective becomes different. And one of the best things that we can do is look up. And every year when it's around the anniversary for her, there's always a flurry from myself and my friends where it's hashtag look up, just reminding ourselves of the power of looking up and looking around and seeing the beauty in shit. The beauty in shit. I mean, that's not the most eloquent thing I've ever said, is it? The beauty in the world around us as spring blossoms. Anyway, I'm never going to be a poet. Helen, it's been absolutely blinking brilliant talking to you, as ever. I've loved it. We've galloped through politics, through Westminster. We've had a little bit of checkers in there. We've talked about running your own business. The only thing that is left is for you to tell me your 6-word memoir, which of course comes from the fabulous Ernest Hemingway's Shortest Story Ever Told. And I love it from a point of view of everybody I work with, everyone I have the pleasure of working with, whether it's coaching or training or learning and development. I ask people to look at what their 6-word memoir is. And it might be the legacy they want to leave, or it might be their mantra or their affirmation that they're going to hold themselves accountable to. What's your 6-word memoir?
I warned you from the start this is going to be at random, but people will understand. People who know me will understand when I say this. So it is Marla, joy on steroids every time. Now, for people that don't know, the person that I'm talking to when I say Mahler is the Austrian composer Gustav Mahler, who has brought me so much joy in my life. I can't even tell you. And I actually went to see Mahler on Monday evening at the Bridgewater Hall with a good friend of mine. And whenever I feel low, whenever I feel a little bit like life is not great, I stick it on and I stick on a good Mahler symphony and I think to myself, do you know what? It's not that bad. It's absolutely cracking. And I've said to my husband that if I die before he does, he's got to make everybody, in terms of my legacy, everybody's got to sit through the final movement of Mahler's Second Symphony, which is all about the resurrection. And then they can all sit there and go, oh, for God's sake, it's really long and it's really long-winded. And my friend Carol would always say, oh, it's a cacophony, Helen. And I would say, it's not a cacophony, Carol. It's absolutely beautiful. And they would all roll their eyes and go, what a joy. What a joy. So that's my thing. And I would highly recommend going on your Spotify and putting some on if you're feeling down, because I promise you would never, ever be let down.
Well, I am not a classical music fan, but I am going to go and have a listen to that. So it reminded me of a conversation with the kids when the kids were little and they were talking about music. And I'm a big fan of Neil Diamond. And Neil Diamond, it was playing in the car and it was one of the long songs that he's got. And I can't actually remember which song it is now. It's something it's something about trains and tracks. Anyway, it'll come back to me. However, it was in the car and Izzy turned around to Freddie and went, God, is this song ever going to end? I think it's the longest song in the world. And Freddie turned around. He was dead little. I don't even know where he came from. He went, no, the longest song in the world will be something by somebody from like Beethoven, because he didn't even have any ears and therefore he couldn't even know when the song was ending. So he just kept going and just kept composing. Like, I don't even know where that word. I was going to say words of wisdom, but there's nothing wise about that. But yeah, the joys of our children providing us with the anecdotes for the future. So enjoy your escape room tomorrow. I hope you get out before the kids, so you can just be a little bit smug. And thank you so much for your time and your energy and your collaboration and your words for me. It's been absolutely bloody brilliant interviewing you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Sarah.
I will speak to you soon. Take care. As we button up another episode of It's Got Pockets, remember that just like that perfect dress with hidden storage, you've got pockets of potential. You can be exactly who you are meant to be with no one getting in your way, not even yourself. Just remember, you're not done yet. That plan B or plan C might be waiting for you. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to work with me, or simply want to connect, come and find me at sarahknightconsultancy.co.uk. On Instagram, I'm Ministry of Midlife, or on LinkedIn, you'll find me as nicest. See you next time.